Welcome all to Around the Corn, Episode 3. We're going to be recapping Week 2 here in the Corn Belt League. I'm your host, Jaden Taylor. Alongside us today, Tyler Reidy, Logan Mosley, and Arnav Pokhrel. Another odd week and another Tuesday night rainout.
Yeah, it's been a rough week here to start the Corn Belt League. You got 2 rainouts in 2 consecutive weeks on those Tuesday night games. So we have yet to complete a Tuesday night baseball broadcast here.
Games, but when we have played baseball, it's been a lot of fun. Saw a walk-off hit by pitch on Monday night with the Haymakers beating the Royal Blue Dogs. But man, it should get very interesting, especially when the College World Series comes to town. Crowds have already been very good out here at Seymour Smith Park, and should only get better as we get into the middle of the summer.
Yeah, as a week through, we've really seen the Filthballers have been the main one once again as the top of the standings here in the Corn Belt League. But after the week 1, we started games on Monday. On June 13th, the scoreboard for that one, and the Crop Dusters and Bombers, that was kind of a back and forth matchup. Both teams trying to get back with some momentum on their sides after struggling to start off this season. The Bombers able to take that one home. Then right after that, another big win, 10-3 win for the Filthballers over the Red Raiders. I mean, they've really just been blowing out everybody. A really back and forth matchup that we saw, and like you mentioned on that walk-off hit by pitch, an odd game. The Haymakers beating the Royal Blue Dogs in 8 innings. Really great opportunity there from Zach Tanabe to win that one, and came out of the bullpen, which we did not see him coming in a game like that. Did very well. And then the Council Bluffs game, Black Sox taking down the Rail Riders 5-3. Then yesterday, another blowout win in our early game at Iowa Western. The Filthballers taking down the Black Sox 11-0. Here at Seymour Smith, the one game we did get done, the Crop Dusters taking down the Rail Riders after a really big 6th inning that was a bit of insurance by Thatcher Kojal for the Crop Dusters to get them past the Rail Riders. Another really good start by Anthony Comfort. And I think the theme that we've seen throughout these first couple of weeks is that if you have good, consistent pitching, you're going to go a long ways. I think that was a big thing last night.
You've seen it with Comfort, you've seen it with Eggert, you've seen it with Hieb, who we'll have on hopefully later on this show. It's all about having that one guy that you know you can rely on, that'll get you a good start, a quality start, go 5 or 6 innings, and locate the pitches really well. Obviously, when you have a pitcher that can locate the pitches on that outside half, it's really helpful, especially in the league with wood bats where things on the end of the bat don't go as far, don't travel as far as they would with aluminum. So it's all about being able to have a good number 1 pitcher that you can really rely on.
Yeah, and consistency is key as these players, as we kind of see, I'm forgetting on the name, but from the game a little bit earlier where I believe it was Jaden said, was kind of surprised to see him go in. Something like that is huge, not only because you can see yourself, hey, we might have a potential closer or reliever here that we can plug in and play, but we also have some other guys in the bullpen that we can pull out. As long as players, if you're able to have 1, 2, 3 decent innings as a pitcher, it can go far.
Yeah, and I've brought it up several times in the broadcast the last couple days. As a pitcher, if you can stay in the strike zone, your chances to succeed, at least in these first couple weeks of the season, rise dramatically because these hitters are still feeling things out, getting back in the flow of playing every day, and the biggest issues we've seen from pitchers have not been getting barreled up. We've seen it a couple times with those great offenses like the Filthballers and the Haymakers, but walks and hit by pitches have really plagued some of these arms. But the ones that have stayed in the strike zone, used their defense to their advantage, have really excelled to start the year.
So kind of with that, I mean, you talked about how important being able to stay consistent in the strike zone has been. Maybe talk about maybe a disadvantage a little bit for some of the hitters has been the wood bats. It's a different feel for a lot of different college guys. How do you feel that's affected maybe sometimes even the defensive strategy that some of these teams have been going through?
Yeah, the outfield I've noticed has been pretty shallow. We've seen a lot of potential bloop hits that probably would have dropped in a normal outfield depth that are usually caught out in right field or center field, but we see on a lot of those fly balls to the outfield where with a metal bat you might see more carry and the heat and the wind. It just really hasn't happened as much. You really got to strike the ball well. You're not going to get as many lucky hits or potential carrying hits with these wood bats as you would with metal bats. So the defenses can really use that to their advantage.
So with that as well, I mean, I think I'm going to go to all three of you guys here. We talk about just the depth of pitching that can be a different thing. For the crop dusters, again, they're kind of leaning on 17 to 18 guys, normally a 23 to 24 man roster. That can be a big difference. The biggest thing that I saw this week that I think was a really big factor in why the Haymakers have been so good is how close they were able to play the Black Sox, just a 5-2 loss up against them, but really just all the guys they were able to put in were incredibly new. I mean, 5 different guys that haven't even pitched in the last 2 years, much less in a high atmosphere game like that, and they still kept it close. I mean, the team overall, the Haymakers, have a 1.51 ERA, the best in the Corn Belt League so far, and they might even have some more guys on top of that can help them out in long innings going forward. I mean, how do you feel maybe finding guys that aren't usually pitchers can help some of these teams go forward?
I mean, really watching that Sunday game, I was talking with Coach Richards before the game. He goes, yeah, I just really need to see who's good. And he was very, very brutally honest. He was like, yeah, we're going to throw 6 guys. One of them's a PO, and then he's going to be our closer. Alec Villanueva started, gave up 3 earned, which is a little bit unfortunate for him. He wanted to set a good tone and kind of establish himself as a good rotational piece. So it was unfortunate for him to give up those 3 in that first inning. But other than that, it was a good rotation. Obviously, you had a couple guys throw really well in that game. There was, I believe, Cole Werner in that game who pitched for the Haymakers, as well as Yorgis, who also pitched a scoreless inning. So it was huge for Yorgis. I think he'll be a very big key for the Haymakers here later on in the season, especially as teams get deeper into the season.
I'm going to add on to that. You talked about Warner. He had an inning in that one. Aiden Urbon also had an inning in that one. In 10 innings pitched so far, he has 18 strikeouts, just to 2 walks. That is an incredible start for him. They have him, Cole Warner, Urbon, and Caden Van Hill. Those are the 3 guys that we've seen the majority of the time for the Haymakers. I mean, talking to both Casey Siwa as well as Kellen Richards, like you mentioned, they rely heavily on those 3 guys. I mean, what's it like to have, I think as a coach, what do you think it's like to be able to have 3 guys that you can trust on to even be your number 1 when you want them to?
I think it's really good. I think it's versatile. You're allowed to rest guys when you need to rest guys, and especially as the league gets on in those later 6th, 7th week, you know you're going to have to rest guys, and you're going to have those bullpen days where you're rotating guys 2-3 innings at a time. So having 3 number 1-esque pitchers is really good, and I think Urbon had a great showing in those 5th and 6th innings against the Black Sox. And his strikeout to walk ratio is incredible, like you just mentioned, so he'll be a really good key to this Haymakers pitching staff.
Yeah, also, you have to remember, these teams only had 1 week of a technical offseason. They only had 1 week to get to know everybody, and now they're getting thrust into it, so we still don't know, coaches might not know who could come in and be a pitcher if they need an extra arm or something like that, It could be, it could be your catcher for all you know, that could have the best arm on the team, and then show out and come throw one of the best innings or one of the best games in the entire season. You never know. It's just a matter of let's just see who we can find because, they're not, these rosters, they're around average size rosters, like you were saying, around 23, 24 players. So it's not like utility's huge in baseball, but still, utility right now, you can still find those guys that you need and just throw them where you need to if you're able to find them.
Yeah, you bring these collection of arms together from all over the country, and in these first couple weeks of the season, it can be pretty difficult, pretty stressful trying to figure out who are those guys that can give you reliable innings, who can come in and protect a lead late, and who might be maybe more of your mop-up guys. But the sooner you can find these guys, the better, without a doubt. Guys that can come in, give you innings, give you consistency, and especially with all the schedule changes we're seeing on, probably until we get to the end of this month of June, we're going to keep seeing seen games moved around, suspended because of weather, and that can really throw your scheduled pitching out of whack. But to have those guys that you know you can turn to really cuts down the rest of the spots that you have to worry and stress about as a coach.
So through the first week and a half of the season, let's look at the Corn Belt League standings now. Get the Filthballers, top spot, 7-1 currently. We talk about a lot of the different games moving around. I mean, there's different guys that we've gone as far as playing 5 games to 8 games, very different types of schedules. 3 different games technically are in limbo right now to a different date. 3 different games postponed that we'll see sometime in this next month or so. The Filthballers, the number 1 spot right now, and somehow they're the one team that hasn't had to deal with any rain so far in the top of the standings. They've just been dominant so far in all their games. The only hiccup they've had is against the Bombers and Adam Eggert, who's one of our Pitcher of the Week nominees after that just incredible performance, 7-inning shutout of the Filthballers. But I mean, you see this top 4 guys: you Filthballers, Haymakers, Black Sox, and Bombers. In the bottom half, the Rail Riders, Royal Blue Dogs, Crop Dusters, and Red Raiders. The one team we haven't even been able to see here has been the Red Raiders. Tyler, why don't you talk about them? What's been the struggles?
Yeah, the issue has just been pitching consistency. The team ERA for them is up at 4.12, and their batting average as well down at 188. And we were talking about coming in the season how the guy on the mound, their win guy, so to speak, the guy who you can throw out there and he's going to give you a chance to win the ball game each and every time. That was Josh Austin, and he got off to a great start. 6 innings with 1 earned run in his first start, but then second time around, 4 1/3 innings pitched with 7 earned runs, and he gave up 12 hits. So if they can't get consistency out of him, the rest of the guys behind him are struggling as someone expected to start the season. So the hitting hasn't really been there. It's been down to Gabe Ratetic and Dalton Nelson, who still have been a little bit underneath what we might have expected from them coming in. But you need your stars to shine if you're the Red Raiders, and so far it hasn't necessarily happened.
So Logan, I'm going to go to you. You talk about the Royal Blue Dogs to start off this season. It's a really big struggle piece. Another team that's really struggling. We thought they might be on the right path after a really good start from Evan Hieb and a big win for them. After he went 7 innings and 1 earned run, 101 pitches in that game, which was really exhausting for him. But we talk about Hieb, we talk about Bach, who's had a couple different opportunities for him. But how do these Royal Blue Dogs switch up and find themselves in the top half of the standings here in the next couple weeks?
Well, it's just got to be for momentum. You have to really push for every single win, every single inning. It's a new inning every single inning, really. New game every single inning. You can have a terrible inning where you let up 7 runs, go back and get 12. Baseball's a sport of inconsistency, being inconsistent. Anything can happen when you have a different guy on the mound. But also want to point out the fact that, and this can relate with Arnav with the Bombers, is the Blue Dogs and the Bombers, they had like almost a co-team for that first chunk because their coach, the Bombers coach, was with Bellevue in the forgetting which tournament.
Spring season,
yeah. So he wasn't even here to start off. So really, it was managing like 2 different teams for Guido, the head coach for the Royal Blue Dogs. So now that he's finally got his team back and just his team, I expect a little bit more of an uptick for the Blue Dogs.
All right, so Arnav here. Talk about inconsistency. It's been the Bombers. It's really been an odd start. They beat good teams, they lost the bad teams, which is really weird. I mean, you talk about beat the Filthballers on June 10th, a win over the Red Raiders on June 9th, and then a win up against the Crop Dusters on the 13th, still halfway through, up ahead up against the Royal Blue Dogs, technically after last night. The losses have come: last place Red Raiders, the second to last place Crop Dusters, and then a 5th place Rail Riders. I mean, what's got to be changed? I don't know. You're winning big games. You're losing the not ones. I mean, what's going on there?
The biggest thing for the Bombers is streaks. You have players who will go on a streak of hitting in 3 games in a row. You have players who will fall into a slump and kind of struggle to get out of it. You have players striking out pretty often, and it's like you just got to find the hitting as it comes to you. There was a game, I believe it was against the Rail Riders. They were down 11-0 at one point, and they were able to claw back and make it 12-9, I believe, which was the final score. And so I think that was huge. I think that's a big momentum shift, and they ended up winning the next game against the Crop Dusters with a final score of 5-2. And so it's really just a game of streaks for the Bombers. Adam Eggert's been throwing an incredible season. We mentioned him before, Pitcher of the Week nominee. He had a pretty solid outing yesterday in the game that got postponed. He threw 5 and only gave up 1 run. And so I think that'll be huge against the Royal Blue Dogs. So we'll see how Eggert does the rest of the season. I think he's their number one guy to look at. But for the Bombers, it's finding consistent hitting, finding those players that can get you into scoring positions, and then finding those players that can bring them home. It's a lot of small ball for the Bombers, not many home runs being hit. There was one hit in that 12-9 loss against the Rail Riders, but other than that, there hasn't really been much consistent hitting that scores runs. It's a lot of getting on base and then having those runners be stranded.
So talk about consistent hitting. It has been Nolan Christensen for the Filthballers. Take a quick break and talk with our hitter of the week right after this. Welcome back to Around the Corn. We now have an interview with our hitter of the week, Nolan Christensen, and his first week of play, 6 for 13 with 6 singles, 3 RBIs, 5 runs, another 4 walks, and speeding on the base paths as well with 3 stolen bases, a 1.050 OPS. An incredible week for Nolan. Arnav, talk with him about just an incredible week for him so far.
Oh, yeah, it has been an incredible week here for the center fielder from the Filthballers. First up, tell me about what it's been like in the first week of the league.
It's been a lot of fun, It's nice to come back home, from being up at school. So, I've got a lot of family here, a lot of people that come out to the games, and it's been real nice.
And you talk about moving from, obviously, Dordt University, where you played there in Iowa. How's it been adjusting back to Omaha? Is it much different? I know it's decently close, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So what's the change been like here playing back in Omaha?
Honestly, it's not that much different. It's a much smaller town, of course. But other than that, the weather is pretty similar. I mean, in the spring,
Yeah, and then the biggest change, we talk about it a lot here on the podcast, but switching from those aluminum bats in college to now using wood bats in the summer league, how have you been able to adjust to using those, making that in this first week and getting consistent batting out of it? How do you adjust that quickly?
So from like an offensive standpoint, I've actually used wood bat quite often. I often train with it in the off season, so that always helps. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like it makes you better in a sense because you really got to focus, to get that sweet spot. You can't get away with, mishitting some balls. They just don't travel as well. But the worst thing, though, is probably the cost. It's a lot more expensive when you break one, so that hurts. But talking about defense, though, about wood bats, I actually like it for the outfield. It's a lot easier to play outfield because, balls don't travel as far. I can play a little, closer in and whatnot. So.
Yeah, and so mentioning that defensive standpoint, you've been pretty good there in center field for the Filthballers. How does it feel knowing that you've got such a solid team around you, knowing that you're hitting in a pretty good spot here, and if you do make a play that's good, you know that there's someone to bring you home. How does that affect your game mentally?
It just gives you a lot of confidence, I think. Just in our team in general, I trust everyone, whether on the mound or at the plate, to get the job done. So it just makes you feel good. It's like, I don't have to be that guy to get the job done because if I don't, I know the guy behind me is going to pick me up.
And obviously the Filthballers sit at the top of the standings right now, 7-1. Haven't had a game lost to the leather yet, so that's good for them. But how are you guys attacking the season so far, and how do you plan to change things up a little bit as you go into the second week of the season?
Well, hopefully, we're doing good, so we don't want to change too much. But
right.
I think for us, it's just keeping it simple. We just try to put the ball in play and throw strikes, and just kind of let our athleticism, take over from there. Because you put it in play, teams will make errors, or you kind of force a tough play and whatnot. And like you said, how we talked about with wood bats earlier, there's only been a few home runs in the league so far. So if you throw strikes, odds are it's going to be caught, or sometimes they get through or go out depending on the wind. But we'll take our odds.
And then finally, kind of talking about how the league as a whole, what made you join this league, and how do you think you're improving just in this first week of play, and how do you plan on improving the rest of the season?
So I'm from Omaha, so that's a big reason for being in the league. And I was in the league last year, it treated me real well, played a lot, felt I got a lot better, and I feel like I'm getting better now, so that's huge. And for me, just similar to what we're doing with our team, I'm just trying to keep things simple. Sometimes I feel like whenever I struggle personally or whenever anyone else struggles, you start to try to do too much, and when in reality, I think you should be trying to do less, just back to the basics. So I'm really trying to, focus on that this year, and it's been working out for me pretty well.
Perfect, and thank you for the interview. That's our hitter of the week here in the Corn Belt League. We'll send it back to break here, and when we come back, we'll have an interview of the pitcher of our week from the Royal Blue Dogs. It's Evan Hieb. This is the Corn Belt League Network.
Welcome back to Around the Corn. Now we're going to get a quick interview with our pitcher of the week, Evan Hieb, in a great start to start off this season. 11 innings pitched, a .91 whip, just 1 earned run allowed, 16 strikeouts, a 132 batting average against just 5 walks. Logan Mosley, I've been talking with Evan Hieb, an incredible 2 weeks for him to start off this year.
I mean, yeah, you said it yourself. Incredible 2 weeks. How are you feeling after this 2-week start?
I feel pretty good. It was a great start for me. Not the best start for the Blue Dogs, but I mean, we got potential. I think we're going to turn it around, but I just want to continue what I'm doing, and the wins will catch up for themselves.
Yeah, like you said, kind of need to turn things around. Only got a few wins on the season there. Granted, that really rough start, having to face arguably 3 of the top teams. As a pitching staff, how do you want to take control and kind of help out the team? Because pitching has kind of been a struggle outside of you.
I mean, pitching is the key to every game, in my opinion, and being able to face 3 of the top teams right away gives us an idea of exactly who we're going up against, and I think that we've shown ourselves that we've got the pitching to compete, and and we only want to play the best, really.
Yeah. So you have a few of your college teammates on your
Yes.
team. I believe the catcher is
Catcher,
one.
yes.
A few. So how would you say that connection from being from Arizona Christian? First of all, how did you get here? But second, being from Arizona Christian, having a few different players on the team, how do you think that helps you out?
Well, first of all, I had a couple of coaches at Arizona Christian recommend me to this league, and I used to live in South Dakota for a number of years, so I've got some family right around here, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me to come here. And you talked a little bit about the catcher, Ryan Eastham. I mean, he's amazing. I got to throw to him all year last year. We have great chemistry. I mean, he helps me just as much as I help him, and it's really nice not having to meet a catcher and like, I don't know, create that chemistry. And so having him with me has helped me a lot during this process.
How would you say your chemistry with the rest of the team is? Like you said, with the catcher, you've had known him for a little over a year now, I would assume. Mm-hmm. How would you say for the rest of the team it is, having known them for just under a month?
I mean, the Blue Dogs are a great group of guys. We do a lot of stuff outside the field as well. Really, I've been blessed with the team that I'm on, and I'm excited for the rest of the season.
What have you kind of noticed that you've improved on as a pitcher in just the short time that you've been here?
I'd say I've been working on more mixing in all my pitches. Sometimes when you come in a relief setting during the season, you can rely a little bit heavily on one particular pitch. So I've been working on just being able to command all my pitches, and that's been really helpful to start the year.
You've had a 103 pitch game, which massive load right there, having to pitch the full game. Would you say that it's easier to do that entire game instead of maybe doing 1 or 2 innings in the middle of the game?
For arm fatigue, I like starting personally. I think that I like to go out and give it my all, and then take 3 or 4 or 5 days, whatever, to recover, to be fully ready to go back for the next one. And some guys like to be the everyday guy, but I prefer to start.
Finally here, as kind of looking forward to the team, what do you think as a whole the team needs to improve on?
I just think we probably need to be a little bit better situationally hitting. We've left a lot of base runners on, and I think once those runs start coming in, we're going to start to win a lot of games.
Has been Evan Hieb, your pitcher of the week here for the Corn Belt League. Send it back to a break.
welcome back to Around the Corn for our final segment of the day. We're going to be previewing tomorrow's game and the rest of this next week before we head back next Wednesday. We had a big matchup tomorrow between the Filthballers and the Haymakers, the top two teams in the standings so far. 7-1 Filthballers, 4-1 Haymakers. Going to be on NCN, Primetime Network, Primetime Night, one big game of the day. I really like where this one's going.
Yeah, I love this matchup. You look at the Filthballers, and we've been talking about it all day, looking back to Nolan Christensen. These guys can hit. You want guys that can hit for average? Trace Mahachik, 667. Christensen started the year 6 for 13. You want power? Brenden Anderson's got 9 runs batted in on 4 doubles, and Landon Geezer's got 7 RBI with 2 triples. Stolen bases, speed. You got 6 of them for Trevor Winterstein and 4 for Jackson Horn. And then pitching for the Haymakers has been phenomenal on the other end. Team ERA of 1.53. We mentioned Aiden Urban, Caden Van Hill, Cole Warner, Zach Tanabe, the hero in the extra inning win the other night. It's like the unstoppable force against the immovable object. It's going to be a great, great game tomorrow night.
I think you highlighted that really well, that pitching versus hitting matchup. We'll see. I want to see the weaker sides of these teams. I want to see the Haymakers hit a lot more. They scored 14 in a win against the Crop Dusters. I want to see them hit more freely against a Filthballers team that's pitching isn't as good. I mean, obviously their pitching's been great to get them to that 7-1 record, but they're not a team that we look at and say, wow, these pitchers are the aces of their teams. They're still trying to work out some kinks there on the pitching side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, best way to put it, a movable object versus a object with as much force. I'm forgetting what you said now.
Unstoppable force, yeah.
There we go. But this really is a potential championship preview right here. We're seeing it this early in the season. Love to see it. But the best defense versus arguably the best offense going up against each other for half a baseball game should be really fun to watch.
And just one more note on these two teams. Filthballers, last 3 games, they've scored 31 total runs, and the Haymakers, on the other side, have a pair of shutouts this year. So it's going to be some kind of night tomorrow.
So I think there's 3 possible options to what we're going to see for the Filthballers. The starter, Corey Palmer, could also see Justin Drury, and maybe they might even go a little bit of a different look with C.J. Fleeman. The only guy we've seen here at Seymour Smith has been C.J. Fleeman in his opening day start. He's had 2 opportunities this season. If it's my money, I think they possibly go with Corey Palmer, maybe even switch it up a little bit to somebody else. Theo Hughes is another guy we could possibly see. We got a lot of different pitching opportunities for the Filthballers. Still a strong pitching team with a 2 ERA. Who do you think they go to tomorrow to be the main guy up against one of the other top contenders here in the Corn Belt League?
Well, I certainly like Corey Palmer. A 0.70 ERA to start the year. That's exactly what you need. We talked about it at the top of the show, looking at some of those teams that have guys you know are going to give you consistency on the mound. And Palmer's one of them. Gage Ingram could be an option as well. He's got 4 1/3 innings pitched out of the bullpen with 0 earned runs. And, of course, Theo Hughes, 0 walks and 6 strikeouts to start the year and 4 2/3 innings pitched. So you look to the guys who you know have the capability to shut down a potent Haymakers lineup and throw them out there. And I think Palmer, Ingram, and Hughes could be the guys.
I was actually going to lead with Hughes. I saw that stat before, that 6-0 strike to walk ratio. I think you have to give him a chance to start, get him a little bit more comfortable, get him into the flow of the game rather than just throwing him in relief. But obviously, I don't know too much about him. I don't know if he was mainly a reliever in college or if he pitched everywhere in college. That's something I don't know, but I would not be surprised if they do throw Hughes out there just because of the way he's been dealing this season.
I think for the Filthballers, this could be a bullpen game. I mean, the Haymakers, they cannot go to a bullpen here. They have to. Ideally, you want probably 2 pitchers, a starter and then a closer, for just how potent this Filthballers offense is. And you have, I mean, overall, they've had a great team ERA. What was it, 1.3 or something like that?
1.53.
Yeah, 1.53. So still, really good ERA, but this Filthballers offense is so potent, I can't get behind a bullpen game for the Haymakers, but for the Filthballers, I can totally see it.
Yeah, so we saw a bullpen-style game, which was a really close one. I think that was, again, different pieces of positives, even with a loss for the Haymakers up against the Black Sox in their bullpen game. But here's one thing that I think has been so much different for the Haymakers than some other teams. With Coach Kellen Richards, again, the biggest mindset for him, although they are winning a lot, that's not the biggest mindset for him. Their feeling is they want to develop guys, get guys opportunities, and they've done that so far. 19 different guys have at least had one at-bat for the Haymakers this season. 14 different guys for the Filthballers. I mean, you have so many different guys that are getting opportunities and still creating runs when you need them. I mean, how does that help with the chemistry? It even really can make some hard decisions for a guy like Kellen Richards of who to put in the lineup tonight.
We talk a lot about Coach Richards. He loves to analyze things, and I think that's what he's doing here with throwing all these batters that he has into the batter's box. He really wants to see who can deliver against what types of pitches, who can deliver against right-handers, who can deliver against left-handers, who's good on the first pitch, who's good later on in counts, who's good like full counts, who's drawing the walks. I think he's looking at all these things and seeing the strongest lineup he can put out against a pitching matchup. So if you're going against the Filthballers who throw a little bit harder, maybe have a little bit less control than the other teams, maybe you want to go with the guys that can draw a little bit more walks. So I think he's going to analyze all these things. He's a very, very smart coach, very well versed in baseball knowledge. So I would not be surprised if he's throwing out all these hitters early on in the season to see how he can play baseball situational.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the top of the show, these teams still don't fully know what they're the best at and what they're not so good at. And I feel like this matchup here could be one of those where we learn the fatal weakness in either the Filthballers or the Haymakers. The Filthballers, they had that one loss to a pretty much perfect game, not on paper, but like a perfect game from Adam Eggert from the Bombers. But they really haven't shown any weakness besides that. If the Haymakers pull this off if they could go bullpen, they could just go straight starter, reliever, closer, whatever it is. If they manage to find something manage to find the weakness for the Filthballers, the rest of the league is going to take note.
And just looking at the way that Kellen Richards is managing the Haymakers team, getting guys opportunities across the board, it really fits in well with that all-hands-on-deck mentality that you kind of have to have to start the season. Some teams like to have it where you got a middle of the order that needs to come in and produce night in and night out. But with the Haymakers, it's next man up. You've got to be ready to go. You've got to be ready to take your opportunity and seize that moment. And tonight's going to be a big, big moment up and down the lineup for this Haymakers team, trying to knock off the top team in the league to start the year.
So we talk about so many different guys. We talk about that bullpen game that we saw for the Haymakers. How much more confident do you feel Kellen Richards is right now that he even feels that some guys that aren't primarily pitchers can still give him and this team innings when they need him to?
I think the biggest name that comes up in my mind is Yorgis. Yorgis threw 14 pitches, 3 outs, went 1-2-3 in that inning. I mean, what an inning it was from him. He was very, very consistent with his locations. And he had a very good strike percentage as well. So I think he's the name that obviously pops into my mind. Also a very good name to say, Yorgis. I love the name. So that's also why it's sticking in my head. But I think that's another arm that you can lean on. Obviously, there were a few pitchers who threw an inning very well, but I don't know about the durability. I think that's the biggest thing that we'll learn later on in this year is how long can you throw these pitchers? How efficient can they throw in that second or third inning, or even the second or third time through the lineup? So I think that's another thing that we're going to learn later on in the season. I think he just threw this game out to see who could pitch, and then he'll go through some more games seeing how long they can pitch.
Yeah, I think it's a great point there that he's an analytical coach, so he is going to look at all the stats, and he may have some sort of program that gives him advanced stats, that we don't know of or something like that. Again, it's an advantage being an analytical coach across all sports. If you know the analytics, if you can understand and interpret every single number to a T, you're going to be at at a bigger advantage compared to all the other teams. And I think that bullpen game against the Black Sox was a perfect way for him to figure out for a game like this if I want to go bullpen or if I want to go a standard 3-4 pitchers.
And it's important to note the differences in schedule between week 1 and week 2. Week 1, you're playing a game almost nightly, starting with opening day last Monday, and then most teams go in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even Sunday into Monday. But this upcoming week, schedule starts to thin out a little bit. You're getting a day of rest between each game in many cases, and that makes it much more important to find guys that not necessarily are going to give you innings and make sure the rest of the bullpen is well rested, but to make sure that you can get guys that are going to throw scoreless innings, give you a chance to win. And I think we just saw a couple of them on Monday night in the extra inning win. Cole Warner, Zach Tanami, guys that went out there and were just cool, calm, collected, and big moment, high leverage situations. That's only going to help Kellen Richards and the Haymakers going forward.
So final thing I want to talk about here, again, the rain, the weather has just been an odd thing that we've seen throughout these last couple of weeks. we're seeing 3 to 4 different games that are going to come to a different starting point later in these next couple weeks to get back to wherever they are in the game, whether it's the 5th, the 3rd. I think there's 2 in the 5th, 1 in the 2nd currently, technically that are going to be out there. How does that change up strategy, do you feel? I mean, again, it's a different kind of day. I don't know if it really changed up strategy much at all, but it definitely could, seeing, again, if your day switches to a different guy, you could have to go to a different pitcher. How does that switch things, do you feel?
So I think the biggest thing, like you mentioned, along the topic of weather is the weather of the game. If the game's more humid, if it's hotter, how far is the ball going to travel off these bats? I think those are all things that you need to take into account before the game. Whenever they do decide to reschedule it, that'll be a huge thing to look at, and as well as how many guys do I want to rotate in, how many guys do I want to rotate out of that original lineup. Obviously, the game that was on top of my mind because it was just played yesterday was the Bombers. You're up 3-1 against the Royal Blue Dogs. You have Eggert on the mound. Losing a little bit of control later on in the game. Obviously, he's gone through the lineup twice. Do you want to keep him in for a fresh start, or do you want to bring in someone else, like a reliever, to throw those last 2 or 3 innings? I think that's a big thing that we'll be looking at for those rescheduled games.
Yeah, I mean, rescheduled games are just weird in general. You could have a guy that had all the momentum on his side and then cut short, you know? Doesn't matter if he was in the 2nd, or it doesn't matter if he was in the close down in the 7th. It was just, kind of weird in general. And it's up to these coaches, like with the Haymakers, their coach being an analytical coach, he might decide, I'm actually going to keep this guy in, even though it might not make sense at the time. If I keep him in, it means he's available. We'll have other guys available for later dates that I would prefer to have for a specific matchup.
And, we see these guys out here 2 hours a night between the lines, but what goes on in those other 22 hours is so important. It's all about preparation, because if you fall behind your routine, nutrition-wise, sleep-wise, physical activity-wise, it's going to get even tougher when you start to get these games rescheduled and you think you're going to pitch one night and then all of a sudden it's 2 nights later. You have to be ready to go at all times, and it's just such an important thing. Coaches have really been emphasizing it with their teams to start the year. Preparation is key.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much for coming on. A great week here on Around the Corn. We will be back next Wednesday at 5 p.m. here at Seymour Smith. Our next broadcast that we have at Seymour Smith will be Sunday, a Sunday night doubleheader. The Bombers and the Rail Riders and the Crop Dusters and the Royal Blue Dogs. I'm your host, Jaden Taylor. That's been Around the Corn. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening.